the right of the Brexiteers to destroy the entire country, which is what's going to happen. If they want to self-destruct, you know, fine, but let them go and do it somewhere else, you know. So, also, other reasons people voted Brexit was because there's a lot wrong with our country. There is a lot of poverty. There's a lot of hopelessness. There's a lot of vandalism and unkempt areas where people don't seem to care. They felt the system didn't care. And for them, the European Union was some sort of rich thing in Brussels that only wealthy people got to visit. And so by kind of stabbing it in the back, it felt to them like we're standing up for Britain now, you know. Unfortunately, that was all media-fed propaganda. I think that Brussels and what the European Union does on the whole is for the benefit of the wider continent. You know, it's kept the peace, it gives out funding, and it gives people hope, you know, helps education and all the rest. And it means that you can go and travel and study in all these different European countries freely. So, and your dad has worked for it sometimes, right? So I think it was a self-defeating sense of power that was given to the masses, and what they did is they thought, well, we'll break the system, without realising they're standing on the very system. It's as if, to give you a metaphor, you know Venice, I don't know if you've been to Venice, in Italy. Beautiful city, I've been there a few times, I love it, right? Now it's all built on a lake, and it's built on piles of wood, great big you know, posts that are being put in the ground, like, don't know, 20 metres down, and they've been there since the Middle Ages. The houses are built literally on these lake posts that go down. It's as if the people of Venice voted to chainsaw all the piles that Venice is built on. They would notice after the first of the houses start falling down. So anyway, you know, that's part of an answer. But I would say the bigger answer is ignorance, which I just have to say is it means to ignore. Right, the word ignorance. As an educator, I'm at war with ignorance. It's what I'm fighting against all the time. And ignorance is simply, I ignore something. You know, somebody walks in here with a bleeding heart. Oh, I ignore it. We'll just carry on. No, we won't. We'll stop. We'll go and help that person, right? We don't ignore stuff that's happening. My country's about to break up. Oh, well, that's fine. We'll just ignore it. You know, that's what the officialdom is saying. I'm saying no. We must stop ignoring. So the active verb that creates ignorance is ignoring. Got to stop ignoring. And that's the purpose of education: is to teach people like you to think the bigger picture, to see all round. Okay.
Yeah, and I understand and I agree. As you've explicitly stated the effects of what Brexit would do to the UK, as you live in France now, how do you feel as if Brexit would impact France? There are a lot of British people that live here as well. What do you think that the consequences of the following through of Brexit would actually have upon people in France?
Well, a total nightmare. I mean, incalculable nightmare. There's about 1 million Brits living in Europe. Several 100,000 in France. Some of them are really close friends of mine, you know. It's a nightmare because our status then goes overnight. If Boris Johnson gets his way and does his hard Brexit, we have no right to live here, guaranteed. We can't access the health system, we can't access anything. It would be a complete, absolute nightmare. And I know people that are waking up with literally, you know, with nightmares over this because suddenly you're told you don't belong here, you know. So, yeah, and something that really upsets me is that, and it's happening, you know, Brits all over Europe who've come and settled here because of the European Union, happily falling in love and having children and having a family and buying houses and all that, and settling into the community, building businesses and so on. And the same with Europeans in Britain, going to live in Britain. They've relocated and happily working and living there. I think that one of the worst crimes of Brexit is the disjuncture this will cause to all these people, both Europeans living in Britain and Brits living in Europe. Let us carry on as we are. You know, I love France. mean, my mother was a French teacher. I'm bilingual. I love French literature and culture. You know, it doesn't make me any less British. I'm also 100% British, you know, and I'm 100% Canadian. I'm a global citizen. I just happen to live in France. I want to keep this amazing thing together, this European Union, which is a flagship for the world of how countries can live in peace. It was designed as a peace project. Since I'm a peace scholar and a peace activist, I want to keep that going. And I don't want Britain to be the one to start breaking it up. It's shocking, you know. And I know how negatively it's going to impact on people living here. Yeah. Okay.
I'm part Nigerian, as I've said, and I was wondering now that as you've told me and informed everyone else the impacts that it would have on both the UK and France, how do you think that Brexit would affect Africa as a whole, or specific regions within Africa?
It's one of the reasons I'm so against Brexit, is because I love the European Union. It's trying to help other regions of the world. So you were saying your dad is working now with a European Union project down helping people face global warming in Nigeria, you know, and other parts of Africa. So the European Union is doing a lot of work in Africa. There's a thing called the Africa Union, which is an attempt to get the nations of Africa to stop fighting. And it is sending peacekeeping troops into different parts where, because many African nations are having civil wars and stuff and fighting over who's the top tribe. So the African Union is trying to stop all that with European Union help. And we're saying, look, people of Africa, look, you can make peace. We've made peace in Europe. Please make peace, right? And we want to help train mediators and development workers and all the rest of it, you know. Now, if Europe starts breaking apart and Britain does its Brexit thing and then Britain starts breaking up, as I've explained, these warlords in Africa will say, oh look, you idealists, it didn't work. You know, there's only one law in life, it's might is right and the rich take everything and therefore we need our guns and let's all carry on with our civil wars. It sends totally the wrong signal to Africa, right? Whereas, you know, Africa has such ancient, rich civilization going back to, like in your country, Nigeria, the Yoruba people and their religious teachings are profound, right? And in Egypt, which is one of my own passionate areas of study, ancient Egyptian religion, I mean, you helped taught Europe how to be civilized, as it were, you know. And the ancient Greeks all went to Africa to study. So we should be having an education race. Right. I mean, I'm shocked at, like, instead of bombing Libya and other African countries like America's done and NATO and creating destabilization, that means people are all sort of leaving Africa to come to Europe, like, in search of stability. We should be helping Africa find peace in its countries and mediating conflicts like Libya. Now the Yemen, you know, again, terrible tragedy happening. So my vision is that Europe should be doing more to help Africa build peace. Can't do that if the European Union is itself being attacked by extreme right-wing forces, which are what's behind Brexit. Racist forces behind Trump. These are kind of white racists, right, that want to reassert that the whites are the best nation. Well, I'm sorry, we ended that when we abolished slavery. I mean, these guys are mad, literally. Steve Bannon wants to bring back the Confederacy. You know, he thinks that, like, everything's been going downhill since General Lee surrendered. You know, but of course the media don't tell you that. It's shocking. You know, like, you're doing American history. Have you studied the American Civil War?
Yeah, and how the South actually broke out into their own, like, Confederate states. At first, I believe it was 11 states.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was actually a disaster because it was due to several political, social, economic and cultural divided views amongst topics such as slavery. So you'll see that the South actually condoned slavery for their own economic benefit and to actually exercise the white supremacy that was in the South. However, the North didn't really like it, and you'll see that they didn't actively fight against it. However, you knew that they weren't for it. And for that to come back, for the Confederacy to come back, it would definitely cause an irreversible.
Well, I mean, it's shocking thought. I mean, these guys are just crazy, in my opinion. I mean, there's a romanticism in certain circles about the Confederacy, you know, because we all like to support the losers in a war. But, you know, the Confederacy was wrong. I mean, slavery was stupid. It had to go. And so the people of conscience in the North, the Quakers and the others, agitated and got it ended. And then, of course, the South didn't accept that and went to war. And anyway, so Steve Bannon was brought up in Richmond, which was the capital of the Confederacy. He's the main guy behind the Brexit agitation. And he is a total out-and-out white racist who is anti-Islamic, you know, everyone that isn't like his idea of a squeaky clean, white, right-wing guy. I mean, it's shocking that these people have managed to seize power behind the Trump administration. And so Trump has been, you know, bringing back into normal discourse things that before the Ku Klux Klan would say, you know. And this is, to me, as a intellectual, you know, shocking. I'm following with interest an American politician called Marianne Williamson, who's one of the Democratic contenders for the presidency election in 2020. She's speaking about this issue, very intelligent. Have you heard her?
No, I haven't.
Listen to her stuff on YouTube. She's brilliant at calling this out. You know, she's a sort of Californian hippie generation intellectual, you know, which is kind of where I'm from. But she's a clever one. And she realises that we have to speak out about justice. And so Brexit is part of a much bigger right-wing backlash against the progressives. These people think that by destroying the left, which is what they call progressives, they're doing the right thing. They're brainwashed into hating anything like left-ish, right? And in America, anything like slightly liberal, they regard as left, because they're so right-wing. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot, you can study this, but the more you look at it, the more you realise that Brexit is going to be a disaster, you know, for the whole world and for Africa too. Yeah. Okay, what was your next one?
You actually are a director here at a Peace Museum in France, and I was just wondering, what has Brexit got to do with peace?
Right, so I think I've tried to explain that, but just to be absolutely clear about this, when I did my degree in modern history, I studied at the University of London, and I did part of the course at the London School of Economics and Political Science, LSE it's called for short, which is a great university, you know. Consider applying there in due course, you know, they do good law degrees and stuff. So there was a man called David Matrani, who was a very clever guy, who worked at Princeton, alongside Albert Einstein, who was working on advanced physics. Princeton University in the States has a thing called the Institute of Advanced Studies, where they put like geniuses, okay? I'm a great believer in geniuses. Whenever I've been head of department in school, you know, I always spot the clever kids, right? So that's what the American academia was doing. That's why they got Einstein to come there. They got David Matrani to come. And they said to him, David, can you design a fail-safe system to prevent Europe ever going to war with itself again? Because they'd had these, like 500 years of continual war. And most recently, World War I and World War II had almost destroyed civilization. Millions of people died. My parents lived through World War II. They met in London during the Blitz when bombs were raining down. You didn't know if you're going to survive the night, right? Well, why? Well, you know, that was Germans who were supposed to be civilized, gave us Beethoven and Kant, you know. So anyway, Matrani sat down and he dreamed up this idea in political science called functionalism, which is that the way to build lasting peace in a region is to start small with little treaties. So first off, you decide that you'll share each other's coal, for example. You won't charge tariffs if I import coal from your country. Then you decide to share the steel. Then you decide the oil. You gradually build up trust. And that's how the European Union was set up. The people behind it read David Matrani's work and they thought we can use that idea here in Europe to stop future conflict. And there was a guy called Jean Monnet, who was a clever Frenchman, whose family had been from near Bordeaux, where they used to ship cognac all over the world. He was a very clever man, Jean Monnet, and he thought, this is great, this is how we'll stop world war in the future. And he talked the French president into backing the idea. The German president, Adenauer, also realised it was a good idea, because France and Germany had been going to war every few years, killing each other. So they thought, no, if we build this system of sharing, we won't kill each other, And so that's how it began in the 1950s. Gradually it increased, so they started sharing in education and transport, and then it developed into the full-blown European Union of today, which I think it's a masterstroke in terms of world politics. The people that are destroying it and speaking against it, if you look into their background, they're all people that will benefit individually in their own tax assessments. They're millionaires who've got money offshore and who don't want to share. So they're the opposite of caring and sharing types. And the European Union is trying to crack down so that all the really rich people have to share their bit for taxes, which is fair enough, Like in Scandinavia, okay, we all share our bit. It's called social democracy. If I'm a billionaire, I'll share a bit. I don't mind being taxed. Whereas these Brexiteers don't like that idea. They remind me of pirates who've all got their stash on some pirate island, somewhere like the Cayman Islands. And the City of London has invented this complicated system whereby they can control the economy. They can control the media, huge influence, so that they can carry on doing their scams. And that's what Brexit is invented by, the scammers. The European Union has seen what they're doing and is taking them on, and that's what this war's about. I'm with the mass, of the 99% of people that don't have huge cash stashed in the Cayman Islands. Thank you very much. Those are the corrupt dictators around the world, the elites, and they're the guys causing the wars. So, as a peace thinker, I've joined all these dots up. I'm doing a commentary on Das Kapital, who was written by Marx in the 1860s, saying that money has a problem in the way it's used. It tends to belong in smaller and smaller hands. It gets into elites who then misuse their power over the workers. That was his analysis. What he didn't realise, and I'm updating the text in my commentary, right, is that the way that capital operates to keep people poor is through having periodic wars. Because its sophisticated machinery, equipment, can now rain death on millions of people. So it's like a sort of conspiracy against normal people. Very rich countries investing hugely sophisticated weapons then like to have periodic wars to keep everybody on their toes. It makes huge profits for them, and it keeps the system as it is, based on fear. According to my analysis, the most recent wars like Libya, Syria, Iraq, these wars we've lived through, have been almost deliberately engineered by advanced capitalist elites to keep the planet in a state of fear. And Brexit, to me, is engineered by the same crew, right? And one of the reasons the British elite establishment want Brexit is because their arms companies that are making weapons in Britain want to be able to go on exporting them to Saudi Arabia, which is doing an illegal war against Yemen. Corrupt regime, extreme right wing, beheads people in the town square. But if we sell them weapons, that's fine. That's what happens if you don't teach people ethics. They think that's fine. I don't think it's fine. I think it's wrong. But those are the people that funded Brexit, because they want their military-industrial complex to be able to carry on. I'm saying no. I want a peace-industrial complex, as do the people of Europe. We're sick of wars. That's why we have a European Union. And these guys are trying to take it down. So you see the joined up dots here, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm campaigning so strongly against Brexit.
Okay.
I'm campaigning for peace.
And how do you believe that Brexit will affect the younger generation? As I myself, I'm not too sure. As I've already told you, but it's not really taught or spoken about in school.
Yeah, I do. I find that shocking, obviously. You're the future, right? When I'm dead and gone, you'll be, running the country, and you can watch this recording and you can think about it. If they get away with Brexit, it's gonna really negatively impact on your future and your children and their children in the way that I've described. Because the United Kingdom will fall apart. Jobs are going to go offshore. They're already leaving. The economy is going to get worse, and there's going to be an awful lot of kids eating toilet paper just to stave off hunger pains. Now, I won't sleep consciously and allow that to happen. So, yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. And the fact that this is being deliberately engineered by extreme right-wing elites. And what do I mean by right-wing elites? Okay, why should we worry about them? I mean, okay, I'm talking about the kind of people that thought Auschwitz was a good idea. Extreme right-wing elites don't care about human life if it services their bigger picture, which is racism in this case. So because the Jews were, well, they're not German, so it doesn't matter if we slaughter, millions of them. That's how they think. So these Brexiteers are coming from that same mentality. If you listen to Steve Bannon and the people deep, deep behind Brexit, they're as racist as the people that brought us Auschwitz. They've created a sort of a nice glossy surface so they don't look dangerous. But if you scratch under the surface, you see the old stuff there. So how's it going to impact? Well, it's it's not going to be nice to be living in a country, the UK, when it breaks up. It's kind of like the Titanic. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, it began to break in two, and I think eventually it snapped in two, didn't it? That's what's going to happen to the UK. That's why I'm shocked that you're not being taught about this in schools. You're not having these conversations. Do you have a debating club in school? Do you have?
We have in my sixth form college. We actually have enrichments. So these are just groups we have every week, just to pass time. To be honest, it's not really something that's.
So is it in the curriculum? It's like one afternoon a week or something. Or?
Yeah, it's just to ensure that we're full-time students. However, the enrichment I go to is Honours Club. I was invited because of my grades at GCSE, and in that enrichment we just attend universities. We are taught more about personal statements and things. How
to get into a good university.
Yeah, and all these things. However, I believe that there was a debate in society in one. But I recently just came back from a summer school in Oxford, and I believe it's an English organisation called Bremain. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. They just came in to teach us about the basic principles of debating and how to actually emphasise your own argument by acknowledging and understanding the opposite argument to actually strengthen your own. And I accept that I haven't really gone into debates or politics or anything like that.
So so if I was head of philosophy in your school, I'd be creating a debating club, getting kids to participate. It's important to exercise your right to think and then discuss. I was in the school debating team when I was at Brighton Grammar School, and in other schools where I've taught, I made sure there's a club for discussion. But no, I'm shocked that there isn't more debate. And the argument that's used is, well, we made the decision, it was taken in 2016, that was the result, just shut up and lump it. That, to me, is a totally false decision, a false argument, because we have the right to rethink. All I'm calling for is a second referendum, right? I believe the facts now in front of us are such that we now vote Brexit down as a nightmare. When people took that vote in 2016, we didn't have the information. So we now have the right to change our minds. And therefore have this conversation like I'm having with you. And so you can go back to your school and tell your head, that you should be having the conversation, you know.
I also study English literature at A-level, so I'm studying John Keats at the moment. As he's a romanticist, I believe that there are other different poets that may have a certain view upon Brexit. As a poet yourself, what do you think that other poets think of Brexit?
I think if you took a poll of poets in Britain, we'd be all like 99.99% against Brexit, you know. Poets are by definition internationalists. We're spies for the kingdom of love, right? And that's what a romantic is. We're lovers of life. We walk along a mountain and we write a poem because we say how beautiful it is, you know. Keats was an internationalist. He was a Europhile, like me. He even died in Rome. He went abroad. He travelled all over Britain. He climbed Ben Nevis. Got very ill, actually, because it was raining the whole time, right? And he went to Rome for the better air, but it didn't save his life. I love Keats's work. Have you seen that movie, Bright Star, about his life?
I haven't, no.
Okay, you must watch it. It's about his love life. You know, he had this romantic love crush on somebody in Hampstead, and it didn't really go anywhere. But I love that film. And he, you know, the Romantics as poets believed in love. The European Union comes out of love for each other's countries. So, although I'm British, I can love France, Spain, Italy, Germany. You know, this is the civilization that gave Romanticism to the world. And all our greatest poets in British history studied in Europe, travelled there, learned European languages. Chaucer, who founded English literature. I don't know if you did any Chaucer.
No, I haven't.
Okay. So when I did A-level literature, we had to do Chaucer. He was an ambassador in what's now Belgium and France. He learned Italian poetry, and his Canterbury Tales are based on European literature styles. And he invented English literature, you know. And all the other great poets of English literature were devotees of Europe. The rich ones who could afford it did what's called the Grand Tour. They would go and visit Germany, Italy, Spain, whatever, and go to all the capitals, you know, and learn. Because we all use the same alphabet, you know, the Roman alphabet. We all share a kind of Greco-Hellenistic Roman mythology. So a lot of poetry, Keats and so on, is all based on this common civilization that we've inherited, which goes back to the ancient Greeks, they were cosmopolitans. They pinched stuff from the Phoenicians, from the Egyptians, you know, from the Celts. I mean, a true European is an internationalist, right? And that's that's the secret of poets. That's why we are inspired by the muses to write. We're prophets of the muses, if you want. Which is why I call this the European Peace Museum and the Museum of the Muses. So Byron is another romantic poet from that era, along with Shelley. They were both Europhiles. Byron loved Europe so much, he travelled around, did the Grand Tour over and over. He wrote this amazing epic called Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Have you studied that?
No, I've studied a little bit of him in secondary school.
Okay, but no, he's not on the A-level syllabus.
No.
It's a shame, because he's probably too political. He was a liberal with a capital L and a great defender of human rights. He was passionate against injustice and cruelty and violence, and so much so that he then went and supported the Greek revolt against the Turkish Empire, who'd been keeping the Greeks oppressed for a few hundred years. And he actually gave his life for Europe, for Hellas, for the romantic dream. He went and supported the revolutionaries. It was dangerous times, you know. But Byron was, he was a visionary poet who was prepared to stand up, you know, in the barricades of freedom. And Shelley as well. Shelley I love. He was another great romantic poet who influenced me when I was starting out as a poet. When I heard about these people there, I thought, why is everyone asleep? Where's the voices now? Where's Shelley now? You know. So that's why I kind of started writing, and I still am. And his great poem, The Mask of Anarchy, is an expose of the horrors caused by the Peterloo Massacre. I don't know if you've been taught that in English literature. Okay. So in Manchester, the Peterloo Massacre happened. when there was a demonstration for peace, prosperity and justice in Manchester on August 16th in 1819. It was a peaceful demonstration, and the army opened fire on the demonstrators and killed loads of them. Just opened fire, shot them all. And people of conscience throughout England and Europe were shocked, like the government shooting on its own people. Mm. And that's why Shelley wrote this poem, The Mask of Anarchy. As I lay asleep in Italy, there came a voice from over the sea, and with great power it forth led me to walk in the visions of poesy. I met Murder on the way. He had a mask like Castlereagh. Very smooth he looked, yet grim. 7 bloodhounds followed him. And so on. You should read it, it's great. And Castlereagh was the Home Secretary who authorised the massacre. The Guardian newspaper was founded at that time to protest. And all the liberals of Britain sort of said this was wrong. So yeah, poetry is engaged in the active pursuit of justice and truth. These romantics were not just fiddling about, making up poetry. They were putting their life on the line for truth and justice. And that's why I set up an order of peace poets. You've come to the headquarters of this.
As a study, as a student of English literature, I also studied Shakespeare. And actually, just reading the Thinker right now, how do you think that Shakespeare would react to Brexit?
I was brought up to love Shakespeare. I used to act in Shakespeare as a young boy at Brighton Grammar School. We had a brilliant English teacher who got us reading it in class, and I've always loved Shakespeare. My father came from Warwick, which is where Shakespeare came from, in Stratford-on-Avon. And as a family, we used to, every Sunday afternoon, we'd do a little Shakespeare reading in the living room. We'd play different parts, my father, mother and me and whoever else we could rope in. And so I really, Shakespeare's in my blood, right? I know him. And I know that he was a Europhile. You just have to read the plays to know that he loved Italy, he loved France, he travelled here. He sets lots of his plays, like Romeo and Juliet is set in Italy, one of the greatest love plays ever written. Antony and Cleopatra is set, he was a cosmopolitan. Where Antony and Cleopatra first ever met was in Tarsus, in southern Turkey, where St. Paul is from. And Shakespeare has the scene. He was a learned man, Shakespeare. And they found recently that he visited Rome because his dad was a kind of secret Catholic, meaning that he was faithful to the Christianity that Britain had followed for 1,000 years, right? But he couldn't be public about this. But the son, Shakespeare, probably was secretly aware of his dad, being a Catholic. So he paid his respects to what's called the English College in Rome. And they found in the visitors' book, William Shakespeare signed it when he was visiting Italy. And he was an Anglican like me. He was faithful to the religion of the government's choice, the Queen. But he wasn't a fanatic, he was also like, let's allow the Catholics to be Catholic. Let's let the Quakers be Quaker. Well, the Quakers went around them, but the Protestants, So he was a broad-minded person who had a magnanimity of heart. His great poetic vision is tolerance. And what causes tragedy is always arrogance. If you study this book, Shakespeare the Thinker, which is a masterpiece by A.D. Nuttall, it's the greatest book on Shakespeare as a philosopher, right? The tragedies are caused by hubris, or arrogance. It's when, or lies, like Othello. He's told lies, which makes him jealous and stuff. So, to prevent